Welcome to our greatest American art form.
The mixtape.
Now, for all of you kids who don't know,
Traditionally, a mixtape is a homemade compilation of media from multiple sources, recorded into a medium like a CD, a VHS, or cassette tape.
what we are presenting to you here is something we call mixtape therapy,
A collection of authentic conversations,
often wacky conversations,
inspired by what inspires us.
except instead of a cassette tape, we are bringing you a podcast
So just as you might share a mixtape, we share these conversations with you.
in the hopes that they spark a similar connection to the good old mixtape.
Now, join us for a little
for some
mixtape
mixtape therapy.
Get down.
Get down, baby. Okay.
All right, I'm ready.
Are you freaking ready to rumble?
I don't know. I don't even know what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna be honest.
We never do, but we're gonna start with the fact that I feel like, are we recording?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I was reflecting on our podcast, and I love this podcast.
Which
And
one? Which one? This one?
our podcast.
Well, I didn't know if you meant the one that we did together on mine, because you've reflected on that,
Yes.
or if you were reflecting on this one. That's why I was asking.
I love any time that we talk and record.
Okay.
It's always a delight. And I feel like it's rare, Scottie, because you and I are such balanced view type people. It's rare that we cover anything that's really divisive.
Sure.
As I listen to our podcast, I'm like, well, this, and depending on where you're coming in life, all can kind of make sense. I think you and I are people that can kind of empathize with the human condition. So we rarely tackle things that are particularly like spicy or inflammatory. So I wanted to bring some of that to the fore. And even though I kind of avoid talking about specific people on the podcast, I think it is interesting that I have this experience with a person who actually falls into the manosphere.
Which I'm so interested about. I'm
And
fascinated.
we're going to get into it. So today we're going to be talking about an episode of Sounds Like a Cult, which is a podcast I really enjoy. It's about everything from actual cults like Jonestown and I'm trying to think of another one, like Ixiom, right? All these cults that people know about, and things that maybe you wouldn't consider a cult, like Soul Cycle or CrossFit, and talking about, what about this falls into a category of cultishness. This one was about the Manosphere, which I think is an incredibly broad topic. There's so many different niches and aspects to the Manosphere, but it's basically, I would say, the online community that is a direct reaction to the feminist movement in various different forms. So, first off, I just want to ask Scottie, you said this was intense. Listening to this episode was intense. Can you go further into what felt intense to you about this episode?
I think the first thing is I don't know how qualified I am to talk about any of this, because like everything they're talking about is online.
Yeah.
And I live so much of my life like not online. Like I put things online, but I don't live there. I just put shit there and I leave, right? And so like that was just like I was just like, why would I care? Like, you know what I mean? Like this is online that we're talking about, but I mean, they were very passionate about that, right? And this is just me being really honest.
Yeah.
Like for all the bad things they were talking about the manosphere, they as people felt very angry. Like
For
they
sure.
felt very upset. And I was
Yeah.
kind of like, well, like this feels cultish to me as well.
Oh, yeah.
To be that upset. And so it was hard, I'll be honest, it was hard to listen because I was caught up in so much of the fact that like I don't know like kind of what they're talking about. They're using terms that I don't even know what those mean, right? And everyone was so angry that like I felt like I had to wash anger off of me afterwards. And I was like, oh my God, like if this is what it's like to be online all the time, I don't want to do that, But that's the only thoughts I really had. And I was more curious about because you brought it to the table, and
Right.
obviously I'm the only man in this whole scenario that I was more interested in like kind of what you were thinking and maybe thoughts and questions you had for me because I was kind of like, you know, am I familiar with this? Yes. Like, I mean, like, am I a man and I know what men do and how men act? Absolutely. But I can honestly say in my real life, very seldom do I come across a dude like this. I mean, and like, and when I do, I'm like, fuck that guy. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels so extreme. And also, total side note, I feel like when I meet people like that, just in general, guys or girls, like you go, oh, this some person's online a lot. Like you can just feel it because their opinions are absolutes. There's no gray. Like there's nowhere to like talk about stuff. It's just like, no, I read on the internet and this is true.
Right.
And so that was my overall feeling. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say.
Definitely. And kind of going back to my original point is that you and I usually come to these podcasts with a pretty balanced view and a little bit of a critique in and of itself of taking extremist language or black and white thought or all of these people suck and all of these people are great. Not that I don't think this podcast was saying that in particular, but yeah, feeling incredibly passionate or worked up or angry is not usually your and my bag, unless one of us, usually me, is like going through some kind of life upheaval and I am having some kind of new revelation about, yeah, perhaps being sucked into a viewpoint that doesn't serve me. That's really vague. Basically, I would never have associated with someone who falls into the Manosphere camp. And defining Manosphere, again, it's difficult. I would say a reaction to modern day feminism is the best way that I can summarize it. But there's different sects of it. I think there's like the tech bro culture. There's the uh, biohacking culture. There's the Andrew Tate, like, what do we even call that? Like pickup artistry that's just based on sexual force. And importantly for today's conversation, there is the Catholic sect of the Manosphere. And as someone who has recently been exploring Catholicism, uh, going back to Catholicism in some ways, I have to admit I'm still not firmly in Catholicism. I have a lot of questions. Being a middle of the road type of person, there are things I like about the Catholic Church and a lot of stuff that I don't. But for a sector of time there, I was like, okay, because I feel like I'm leaning towards Catholicism, I should date other Catholics. And so, since being in this interesting time of my life, a little bit of in between spiritual beliefs, exploring with different parts of my identity, I actually went on several dates with a guy because he was a Catholic therapist. I'm like, well, that's interesting. That's like, I'm like, well, this is probably not a great idea. I think me dating another therapist is generally not a great idea. I think it's good to have balance in relationships, maybe not be doing the exact same thing with your career. It gets a little weird. Um, but yeah, I was like, well, why not? I should at least meet this person. Maybe we'll have stuff to talk about around work, or we'll have things that we relate on, and we did. Uh, but for all intents and purposes, he was firmly in this camp, specifically around the Catholic end of it, which is Nick Fuentes is a big one. I don't know if Tucker Carlson is Catholic or Christian. Do you know?
I think he's Christian, but I don't know if he's
Yeah,
Catholic.
he's Christian. Um, and the interesting thing about taking the Manosphere to a more religious standpoint or having religion be a big part of it is it's not just I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I am not getting success in my interactions with women, I feel disenfranchised, left out. It's not just that, it's that plus, and this is an attack from the devil to ruin marriage and to ruin reproduction, and that it is in all senses of the word like anti-Christian. So what becomes seemingly just a battle of the sexes now turns into like this is good versus evil. This is like spiritual warfare, which is just upping the ante 1,000%. So that was a really interesting experience. And again, because I don't meet these people in real life, the only time I have met people who are sort of in this sphere are clients that I've had in therapy, because usually I gravitate towards people who are like me and have similar views. So I had a couple of clients that were dabbling in this world. And from that standpoint, of course, it's my job to have empathy and to understand them. And so I can say definitively those people were in some kind of pain, some kind of disconnection or feeling. I think the big one is rejected. I think feeling rejected by women is like the big theme. And it's my job to really try to understand them and empathize with them from the standpoint that, okay, they must be really wounded from something in their lives. And I think that's true for the most part. But then you meet people, it's like, okay, I don't know how, like, not to say that one person's pain is greater or less than someone else's pain, but uh, you don't necessarily have to have had some like crazy traumatic event, I think, to gravitate towards this, because it gives you a deep sense of belonging and purpose, to have a really strong stance, whether it's political, whether it's battle of the sexes, whether it's religious, right? I think there's something that feels really empowering about like, okay, we're on the cutting edge of some kind of uh whether it's spiritual warfare or cultural crisis, and we've got to like really buckle down and fight for this. Um, but yeah, so like meeting someone who actually had these views of like women belong in the kitchen, women should not be able to vote, all the way to we shouldn't be vaccinated, like every right wing like perspective that you could think of, this guy was about. Um, and I just wasn't sure, like, what, in sharing all these views, like, what was he trying to get out of me? Like, what was, because I obviously didn't share this kind of extremist viewpoint. Um, and so I couldn't really tell if like he enjoyed like the banter of just being inflammatory and like was wanting to debate or argue. And I think that's a huge part of like the personality that is drawn to this, is like, I want to fight, I want to argue, I want to get into it just for the sake of arguing. Um, but yeah, it was just so interesting. Like I'm at a little bit of a loss for words here, other than I think he was also testing me to say, like, can you hang? Can you hang with this? Can you get on this mission with me? Can you also be in a war against feminism with me? Because it's like the Antichrist. And of course, the answer to that is like, I cannot, like, I cannot get on this team with you. Um, and I'm sure for some people who know me at all, the fact that I would even entertain this person in any capacity would be seen as downright offensive. But I'm a curious cat, and I honestly was like, well, like I'm in a weird time in life. I feel very isolated, which is interesting. I think it's like similar to people who would be drawn to the Manosphere. It's like I'm kind of isolated. I don't have a lot of friends in community. So I'm going to explore this weird niche thing simply because this is clearly giving people purpose, and I feel like I'm kind of lacking in direction. So, uh, yeah, and to your point about this all being online, again, these like really strong viewpoints that this person did have in person and was sharing them out in the world. Like he was a part of his local communities, getting into fights with people, talking about trans rights. Like he was actively arguing against funding going to disabled people. Like he was in it. He was like out in the world. He was not just a troll online. And so there is like person to person conflict over this. But at the same time, I'm like, I feel like this viewpoint of yours got so escalated because you are chronically online. Anyway, that's sort of a rant. Scottie, do you have any questions for me?
Well, let me start off by saying the biggest takeaway out of this whole episode that I took is the one girl said, if you don't know what if you don't know what cult you belong to, you're probably already in one.
Yes.
That was my biggest takeaway. And sitting in the viewpoint of where I am as a man,
Mm.
right? The way it feels to me is I could take Manoverse or what was it,
Manosphere.
Manosphere. I could take Manosphere and I could replace it with any extreme on any end and go, this is the way that person's going to act. So like, I'll give you an example. I just said this to a client the other day. I was like, sometimes I'll meet these like old ladies that teach like aerobics classes,
Mhm.
and like all they want to do is talk about exercise, and everything they know is what they eat, it's what they do. It's like everything revolves around like exercise and healthy living and not drinking margaritas only on Fridays and like all this stuff. And I'm just like, shut up. Like shut like I don't I am not in anything that deep. The deepest thing I'm into is sneakers. And I don't talk about it with people because like I'm into it. It's like something I'm into. It's not nobody else gives a shit. And it's weird to go like, well, okay, we're gonna replace sneakers with this whole thing that's attacking feminism, right? Like to substitute. But in my mind, this is just human behavior. Like it's human behavior. And to get for me, like I feel like it's always been around. This is nothing new. The
Yeah.
behavior is nothing new, but to your point, it's very amplified by online, and online gives people permission to say things in public or to other people that they probably wouldn't say because they're being confirmed by something that we don't even know if everyone on there is real people.
Right.
It could be one person pumping a bunch of bots to fuck shit up. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And like to trust that feels crazy to me, you know?
Right.
And so, I think we all have to be very careful about what we get involved in, what we fall into, and keeping constant awareness and balance around like ourselves, you know what I mean? Because anything could get deep real quick.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like it could be something really good. You could get into exercise and that would be great. But your cult could also become the manosphere. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like it could become something totally like that. And I think that um I'm reading I started reading this book about happiness,
Mm.
right? And one of the main things it says so far is that finding connection and purpose, like reason to be and to do and to serve others, is like the thing that'll make you the happiness. And I feel like when people get online a lot, they just get over there and get bored, and they're not exploring themselves, and they're not exploring other people, and they're not serving other people, and not helping other people. So then when they have to go out in the world, they have no idea how to act.
Mm.
Old people get like that. They get isolated, not online, but just because they're at home and nobody visits them, or they have no, everybody's died, they have no friends, their kids are gone or whatever. And then they go out in the public, and then old people get in an argument with people. My mom does that shit all the time. Like, you know what I mean?
Might be
And so,
online in a very different way.
but it's the same thing. When you isolate somebody down, there's no connection. You lose purpose, you lose meaning, you lose your reason why we're here, is which to serve and be with others. And then when you get back out into it, it's like you don't know how to act.
Yeah.
Like like the person you described, well, you're absolutely right. I was like, what the hell is Hannah going on this date for? But the person you're describing, if I met that person, as a man in my mind, I'm like, I'm not gonna be friends with that dude. Cause like this is crazy. Like I don't deal with people that talk in absolutes really. You know what I
Right.
mean? If you're like, it should be like this, and it should be like this, and it should be like this, I'm like, whoa, wait, there's way more space there, right? I will say one last thing, and then I want to get you can get some of your thoughts. I was checking out this podcast, and this woman, and we can maybe do this later. She wrote this book, and it's called The Occult of Feminism, right?
Someone someone wrote that, The Occult of Feminism?
Yes.
Interesting.
Okay, so
The cult
I'm
of
glad.
feminism.
Yes, occult, OCC.
Occult. Okay.
Yeah. And one of the things she said, which I feel like I feel like I could get with this, is that women have been made felt guilty to want to stay at home, to be stay at home moms. Like
Hmm.
that's a totally cool thing to do. Being a stay at home mom is really really great. But to make that happen, we'll say in a Catholic relationship, using the idea of Catholicism and the way, like the man has to show up being like, I would do anything for my wife.
Hmm.
She's staying at home with my kids. She needs to be taken care of and provided for. She needs to have all the tools and all the things she needs. I need to treat her like the most important person in this cog because she is.
Hmm.
And I think some people read that and they go, this bitch is going to be my slave. Like
Mm,
and
yes.
that's not how religion works. That's not what the Bible was talking about. That's not how Catholicism works.
Right.
I'm not Catholic, but I'm going to take a wild gander
Yeah.
because my girlfriend did stay at home and was a stay at home mom for 5 years to help raise my daughter. And I wouldn't have done it any other way. But I also had to go like, hey, do you need money to go take care of yourself? Do you want to get your nails done? What do you need? Like, you know, what do you need to be happy? Because if I'm the dude providing all the income that provides the means to her happiness, and I'm denying her that and going like, well, you only get to do that if you do this or da 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 da, and put all these rules and shit. That's not a partnership. That's not a relationship. And
Has to be a
like,
legal marriage.
yeah, and that's someone living on the extreme end of something, taking what someone's saying, roping it into making it absolutes for themselves, or the person saying it's absolutes and taking that in. And like life just doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? And like that dude you're talking about, he ain't getting married anytime soon. I'm already tell you. And if he does, he's gonna find somebody that's willing to be a slave,
Right.
right? But at some point, that person's gonna be like, fuck this dude,
Hmm.
right? And so, like, you don't want that. I want my girlfriend, my daughter to be strong, independent, self-serving, self-think, like independently thinking people that I help uh make that happen. Like I'm the person that helps facilitate that for them in the ways I can, whether they need money or my time or whatever, right? Like because if they're not, then it's just me like running over shit, or like we're not a team, we're not a partnership, this isn't a relationship, it's just me having someone I can control, I know can control them, and maybe I'm happy, but am I really happy? Are you really happy when you're controlling someone else and they're doing shit against their will? Or would you be happy if they were totally being genuinely 100 authentically themselves and showing up that way and giving back to you in that way?
Well, yeah, and this is where I'm like, I don't know how this dynamic would actually ever play out. There's also the frustrate, like using the stay-at-home mom as an example, right? And I think adding to this idea of anger or seeing the world as this dark and frustrating place in which you as a man can never really win. There's a lot to do with economics, right? Like being a stay-at-home mom, maybe you can vouch for this, is I would imagine there's some economic benefits to it, and it's an incredible amount of stress for there to only be one income, like one bringer in of income. Wow, one provider. Um, that's right. We know for so many different reasons that a single income home used to actually be a reality for most people. Like you could actually do that. And we're living in times in which dual income is kind of necessary. And so this world that you were dreaming of, or this dynamic in which you've got a stay-at-home mom and then a provider, is inaccessible to a lot of people just from an economic standpoint. And so instead of being angry about that on a larger systemic level of how, wow, we're really being screwed by like the fat cats upstairs, it feels easier and more accessible to put the blame on women in general or men in general, right? Like to kind of take that standpoint of, this is something that I can blame like people in my sphere for, because that feels like I have more control over that than I do over the economy at large, which it feels incredibly daunting. I'm also coming to this perspective from the standpoint of people who are currently dating. I'm sure I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I have clients and female clients who are feeling incredibly frustrated because this is starting to be the dominant perspective of a lot of single men, right? You take single men and single women, and they're not all of them, but a lot of them are frustrated that they haven't found a partner yet. They're frustrated at dating in general. And so they start to double down on, okay, there's just no good people left. Like everyone, all women are feminist harpy shrews, and all men are like in this crazy, violent, sexist manosphere. And again, I'm fortunately not finding myself in that place currently, but if you if that is your experience, I think the most comforting thing when you are feeling like frustration in dating is to double down on other people who are also frustrated, which is just going to kind of take you to the extremes. And I can say as a woman, there are times in which it's incredibly cathartic to get around and complain about men. Like I think that is like a mainstay of female friendships, and I would imagine that happens for men as well. But I don't know how much men are getting together and talking about love and dating. In fact, I don't think it happens all that often as compared to women who, well, you can, and this is where I want to get your perspective on it. Uh, I think women notoriously have richer friendships, have more in-person connections, and are able to process through emotional frustrations a lot more easily. And so I don't know. Like, I don't know if men are getting together and talking about their feelings around romance and relationships.
Maybe I'm the wrong person to ask for this question, but like in my world, my little world, when my friends have problems with dating, I'm the person they come to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm the person they talk to. Or when we're in groups of guys, like, somebody will say some crazy shit, and I'm the person that's like, well, have you ever thought of it this way? Like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe say some like manosphere type things, like, oh, like, I don't use that language, so I don't know. But they say something that's like one-sided, rude, extreme in, and I'll be like, well, have you ever thought that maybe blah blah blah? You know what I mean?
Mm.
But when you're online, if you're again, if you're getting confirmed online, right, then you're confirming like, yeah, you're right. Like they're bitches, all of them. You know what I mean? Instead of your friend going like, well, hey, have you ever thought about that? Maybe she doesn't like being called a bitch. You ever thought about that? You know what I mean? You ever cross your mind? I have this. I've talked about this before. I have this big thing of like just like being real life, like go do shit, show up at Whole Foods, like volunteer somewhere, and blah blah blah. And when I get online, like say I was single
Mm.
and I was on a dating app, or I was like online dating or like meeting people online, I guess. You know what I mean? What am I being shown? I'm being shown your hottest pictures. I'm being shown your greatest accomplishments. I'm being shown everything that's wonderful about you in this online thing. But then when the person shows up, they are real with all their flaws,
Right.
right? And I think that sometimes, I'm not in the dating world, but I would imagine in the dating world, everything's propped up so high Like, you know,
Getting
like
on the
everybody looks
call
so
from there.
good. Like, everything's down from there. Like there's nothing else. There's nothing higher than that. Like, you know what I mean? Unless you're gonna go like, hey, like, you know, my fuck ups are greater than my accomplishments. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And I think that that doesn't, again, when you go to extreme ends where everything's black and white, it doesn't leave you much space to to grow with another person through their flaws and everything,
Mm.
you know? And let me say this, let me just say this, okay? When I decided that I was going to stop being a piece of shit is where my relationship changed with my girlfriend
Yeah.
and where she changed. Now, I'm not saying that she needed to change. She wasn't like bad or horrible before, otherwise I wouldn't be with her. But when I changed my stuff and the way I communicated, it put her in a position to like either communicate well or keep communicating poorly. Like the more that I tried to be and communicate well, she either has to communicate well with me, we have to communicate well together, or she just fights against it, right? And that wasn't received well in the beginning. Like, you know, like she didn't exactly want to communicate in that way or didn't understand, or maybe, you know, she's caught up in old stuff. She's blaming me for shit or telling me I'm being passive. And I had to hold my ground and be like, no, I'm going to show up as my best person. And now our communication is great.
Mm.
But that it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of work that I'm responsible for.
I'm curious, real quick. Did you feel like you, in order to communicate well, do you feel like you had to, for lack of a better term, water down your stances on some things? Like you had to come to more of a middle ground.
I definitely I definitely had to, like, we'd get in an argument about something and I would go back and I would just like sit on it and walk through it. You know what I mean? And then at some point, almost always, because it's an argument, so probably I'd come back to her, I go, hey, I see what you were saying here. I responded totally horrible. I want you to get the things you want. Can we come to a compromise? This is my idea, what ideas that you have. You know what I mean? Like, did that answer your question in the sense of
Yeah, well, and this is what's interesting. Um, I would say that sounds like more like basic communication, basic human interactions, which is I can see your point, or
but
um,
people don't like understand, like, I mean, me, I wasn't doing that. I wasn't doing just
yeah,
the basics. Like with my ex-wife, I
I'm saying
wasn't doing the
I see your point of view and I understand,
yeah,
and
I
yeah,
wouldn't do just basic shit to like try to like I was like, you know, like I was like, fuck you. And then next time we saw each other, it's like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry. Okay, back onto our lives. And like nothing, there was no like
deeper
looking
repair.
back or processing or analyzing, you know, almost like from a distance, both of us looking at the situation and going like, wow, how could we have responded better as a team? You know?
A little
And
bit more analysis there as opposed to just like shots fired and then like, well now we're over it because we're
well,
not angry.
because I think that's what people do. Like, you know, like people aren't like working through like ish. I mean, there are things right now about my girlfriend that I don't like. I'm sure there's things she doesn't like about me, right? But I don't let those things hold me back from us growing in other areas. And then the things I don't like about her aren't as a big a deal because we've grown so much in these other areas. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But let me say that when you're trying to, you know, set boundaries and change who you are and really show up in the best way possible, if someone's not doing that, they're going to be like, they're going to attack you.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Or at least that's my experience. Like, you know, when they're not used to someone trying to like, and I try to be really aware of like, hey, are you being manoverse here where you're talking, you know, like mansplaining stuff, or like, are you being pompous about your position and what you're sitting in? And I try to go like, no, like, you know, I think this is reasonable for me to set this boundary and ask for this thing. And, you know, so I'm always self-checking myself, and I'm sure I've gotten out of bounds before, but like me changing my shit changed my world.
Yeah. Of course.
And like, as an example of that dude you went on the date with, he changed his shit, and so it changed his world,
Yeah.
right? But he could change it in a different way. And and you can change it a different way. And I feel like that now that I've changed my life in a direction that feels positive and good and healthy and stuff like that, now I'm attracting all these people that want to do similar kind of things. And if I meet someone that doesn't, I'm like, well, fuck that guy. Like I'm not even gonna, I mean, obviously in a person to person, polite, nice, like have conversation. But in my mind, I'm like, we're not going to roll around the same. You're going to be an off character in my movie. You're going to be like a
Right.
pass through. You're not going to be, supporting actor or even like a really special extra. You're going to be like the dude that like just walked through the back of the scene because I don't have time for that.
Right. So I'm curious if in your relationship, your arguments or disagreements have ever centered around these greater themes of men and women or of politics, say, or more liberal views or more conservative views. Because that
Never,
I'm seeing
never.
that a lot in couples and both in the couples I see and in the single people who are dating that I see that there's this real experience of feeling like you're on totally different teams from a larger like macro perspective, and that say like the woman in the partnership of a hetero relationship is is like backed by a lot of women who feel really angry, really disenfranchised, attacked, and then sort of like the man in the relationship starts to drift towards, and it's not like either one like encourages the other one to do this, but like the man in the relationship is maybe like leaning way more heavily into conservative viewpoints or criticism of feminism, and then it's like their arguments take on a more political stance, which then again it becomes less and less of a person to person argument and more about like we are on completely separate teams. And I think that is it has a lot to do with our current political climate. And so that to me is just
So
interesting.
two
Like we're
quick
going to
thoughts.
separate echo chambers. Yeah.
When people in a relationship and they're not communicating, what do you think they're doing during that time? What do you think they do during that time?
I mean, they go and find other people who support their point of view.
Online probably,
Mm.
right? And so Erin has no social media, right? She spends almost no time online. Okay. I spend the time I spend online is to post about my podcast or like, like something I'm doing or whatever. And I pretty much like get off. I don't have something I'm into on that. Right. And so I don't want to say like the internet, this is the internet's fault and just get this blanket statement, but I would bet money that people that struggle inside relationships, some level of it, it's like money, sex, and like the internet. You know what I mean? Like there's some level the internet is impacting their thoughts and things. And if you could get away from that, then you could come to better community. Because as long as you're kind of dabbling in it on each end and you're being influenced by it, I mean, it's in the back of your mind. It's influencing you. You know,
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
for sure. I mean, and that's something that's scary, right? Is that you don't have to be the most extreme person to slowly but surely be influenced by these more extreme views. And I saw that in my last relationship. Like, slowly but surely, my last partner was drifting further and further away from me ideologically and politically. And that was scary to me, right? It's like, and like, where is this coming from? I mean, a lot of it was, of course, online, right? And to have to see a person that I felt was very moderate and middle of the road slowly drift further and further into extremism, I think is more common than we think, right? It's not just like
yeah.
it takes a wackadoo to hold these viewpoints. I think it's like this like frog in the boiling water scenario. So to your point, Scotty, I think anytime we feel disconnected, we're searching for connection. That's what's so insidious about it, right? You're not just going to the internet to be a dick. You're turning towards the internet because you're trying to maybe work through things in your relationship, or you're trying to find answers to how to better resolve conflict, or you just need something that feels good and like an escape from how difficult everyday life is, including conflict with your partner. And then, yeah, it's kind of a slippery slope from there of not communicating, turning towards this other thing that will validate. Like if you want the internet to validate you and your point of view, especially ChatGPT, oh my gosh, if you just want to be in an echo chamber and and feel supported and like you're not totally alone, like it's getting better and better out there for you to somehow find satisfaction and community and camaraderie in something that's not a person, not a real
Well,
flesh person.
but I would argue that that is none of those things. It's selling you on the idea that you're going to have community and stuff like that, but that's not real community.
Mm.
Real community is like with other people. Our brains are wired to be with people.
Right.
Like human beings, they're wired for that. They're not wired for the internet. They're not wired for all this other stuff. So where is it like it supplements it? It should just be supplementation and a tool.
Mm.
It shouldn't be the thing. Like, if you're having trouble with your spouse, like, yeah, you could get on the internet and go, well, like, how could I, but talk to her, talk to him. That would be the best thing to do. You know what I mean? Y'all are in the fucking relationship together. Like, talk to them, I want to tell a quick story because I think it sums up kind of what we're talking about. Because I was thinking about, well, how do me and Aaron talk about politics and how do we talk about religion? Right. And we talk about politics very like loosely. Like, I'll go, did you see blank? And she's like, no, because she's not on the internet. And then she'll be like, well, that's horrible. And I'll say something and she'll be like, well, I don't agree with that. And I'm like, and then it just kind of, there's no fight or anything. Like, I'm just like, oh, we just don't agree on that particular subject. You know what I mean? That's politics at our house, right? But this is what's most interesting. So I fancy myself as a religious person. I
Mhm.
believe in God. Okay. But she doesn't. She always says, if God was real, why would he provide all this suffering? You know what I mean? So
Classic.
whatever. Classic,
Argument.
classic non-believer. Anyways,
Classic thought I have all the time too, though. Like as someone who does believe in something greater, I ask that every day. So yeah.
anyways, so I was having a hard time with my stand-up comedy class. I haven't told you this, but like I committed to doing this for a year, like no matter what, like I'm going for like a year. So like even if I don't want to go, like I'm still going kind of thing.
Yes. Love the commitment.
Anyways, and so I'm having a real down thing and like I'm gonna have to perform. I can't remember what it was, right? But she like I'm talking about it and I'm depressed and stuff. And she said this. She goes like something to the effect of like, God will give you the strength to do blank or whatever. And in my head, I just stopped and I was like, well, you don't like in my head, he's like, you don't believe in God. You know what I mean? But surprise, surprise, the influence of whom I am and the words I speak, how I show up as a Christian, influence somebody else without telling them that they have to follow Jesus. Look at that. She said it on her own with her own words. Yeah. Right? And that is communication. That is the power of God. That is how you show up as a Christian, to have someone else say the words out of their mouths and almost start believing without even know they're believing, right? But that is consistency on my part is how I show up. And not arguing with her about being atheist or a non-believer. I never question her. I don't quiz her. I don't go, well, God's gonna send you to hell because you don't believe. I don't ever say any of that shit. I just show up as me, and it impacted her. Yeah. Right. And that's what, in my mind, that's how you get away from this kind of cultish stuff in any section, right? Is you have to show up as a very strong you and your beliefs and who you are so that you don't end up in a cult, right? And hopefully that belief doesn't become a cult either. Like, you know what I mean? Like, hopefully you can.
You always can.
Just enough self-awareness for that, right? You know what I mean? And so I don't know what I want to say to that other than like I'm glad I'm not so online that this stuff is impacting me so much. You know what I mean? And it's so sad that young people or people younger than me feel so disenfranchised about dating and relationships and communication and being with each other that it falls into these ends, and then you come across people like you do. That just really sucks. It makes me sad.
Yeah, me too. And it's fascinating. And I think, right to your point, I think divisiveness has existed for since the dawn of human beings, right? Like us versus them, tribalism, it's like baked into our bones. And just to get a little bit more specific on this cultural phenomenon of battle of the sexes, is that I don't think that women have had any kind of power until recently. On a larger scale, yeah, I think women have power in their individual relationships. They have right power on a smaller scale, but never have women had so much of a voice. And so I think we are being faced with something that is far louder than ever before. But it's coming from something important, which is like, oh man, this whole group of people that didn't have a voice now has one. And so I think it's sending a lot of toxic male traits, for lack of a better term, into hyperdrive. And a feeling like not only are we holding these views, but it feels like we have to blast them out on a megaphone. And
I
to that,
also wonder. I wonder, it's is this intense level of this right now just a season? And I don't mean to like put down the idea that it's not happening, but everything has its ebbs and flows. I'm sure there was points and times in history where men were louder and assholes than they are at this moment, or a moment, other moments, right? And so is this the ebb and flow of this, and does the strength of the support of women eventually push it down, and then it goes back down again? It goes back to, I don't know. Do we get a different president and something changes? Like, what if we got a female president? would
that would
would
be
that
cool.
would that change everything? We don't know. We don't know. But I mean, we are only responsible for our responses,
Mm.
right? That's what we're responsible for. So when bad stuff happens that you did not intend to show up for, or that was not, well, how do you respond? How are you going to respond to this bad idea, this bad thing, this bad person? Like me, I'd never go on a date with that guy again, and I would block him. That would just be me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was cool. Didn't have to block him. It was a natural separation of like it
I
became
bet.
well, it became very clear that we were like not aligned, and it didn't come from fighting about these things. It came from me just distancing and distancing and distancing and then just basically not joining in the fervor of anything he was saying. I'm like, well, you seem to feel really strongly about this, and I don't feel that way, and I don't feel like I have to school you. Some people would argue that I should school him and fight back. And I think he was getting plenty of that in other aspects of his life. I think people were fighting him all the time, and he thrived on that. Um, but there is a softer kind of realization, which is like, huh, yeah, maybe I'm 45 and single, and maybe I should start to look at how I'm presenting myself as a potential partner.
Yeah, I mean, you're responsible for you, right? Okay,
We
one
got to get
quick story. One quick story, and then we're gonna get out of here because I think this has to do it. Okay, so I went to lunch with my financial advisor the other day. Okay,
okay.
and he wanted to go to a pho restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Pho,
wait, pho
pho.
pho restaurant?
PHO. Yeah, we got you.
Anyways, and so when he showed up, like we are meeting with my mentor and somebody else, and I go, "Well, who picked this restaurant?" He's like, "Well, me." And I was like, "Man, I never would have guessed you for a guy that liked a pho or whatever." So we get in the restaurant, we sit down, and I said, "Well, what do you like?" And he was like, "Well, I like this and this, and I usually get this or whatever." And, da, da, da. And we're sitting there, and he goes, "Well, I can." This is what he said: "I can tell from your questions, you probably like pho too." And I was like, "I hate it." I was like, "I don't like it at all." And he was like, well, why are we here? Why'd we come here? And I would go, because I'm trying to expand myself. I'm trying to get outside of myself and try things and do things new. And that's not your response. I showed up. Like, I knew what I was getting into. I knew I didn't like pho before I showed up. You know what I mean? But he made the assumption that I did just by the questions that I asked him, right? That part, right? And so that's a lack of awareness on him to not go, well, he asked me about it. I wonder if he likes it, instead of just making the assumption. But people do that so much. This guy you went on the date with, he just made the assumption that you agreed with everything that he was saying. You know what I mean? Instead of asking you what you thought, asking you your opinion, asking you, like, good communication, not just one-sided communication. I think that's another thing that the internet really fucks us over on, is because the communication's kind of one-sided. You know what I mean? Like, the
There's
internet's
that.
it's like you're talking to it and it's talking to you, but it's not like you're just like, you're not like you're not getting an argument with the internet, like, especially with your own, like, the views that you like. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
What were we gonna say?
No, it was just interesting. Well, because when I did challenge him on a lot of these points, or say like, "Ooh, like that's really extreme. I like that doesn't sit well with me," he would immediately walk it back. I think because he probably wanted to date me, right? Like that's what we
So
do. We
he's
walk
he's
things
not
back.
he's not really the person he really is. Isn't that extreme person with these views that he's regurgitating online if he's walking it back, right? Because, like, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong. A man in the manosphere,
Manosphere.
he ain't walking shit back. Like, the people I know, they don't walk shit back that they say. When they say
Mhm.
some crazy ass shit, they stand hard on it, right?
And
And if
he did. I
someone's
mean, he did, but there's always going to be that waffling, right? Because it's I do think it's human nature to try to find some kind of common ground. Um,
sure.
and I think he wanted to be perceived well by me. It was like this weird combination of like wanting to get in a fight and wanting to be perceived well.
Okay, we're gonna have to do a freestyle about this at some point, about just this date. We're gonna do just the date and what y'all talked
Right.
about. If
All
you have
right.
something that's mixtape therapy for you, make sure you let us know. Hannah, we'll see you next time.
We will.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.